Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to come here. As you can see, our elected representatives have been doing their homework, and it gets harder and harder to add to what they've been saying, but I hope to do that. I've also been working with Joe Mancini on LBI. Joe's told me for 2 years now, he said, Bob, if I ever make a mistake, let me know. Haven't had a chance to do that yet. But anyway, what I'd like to do is kind of amplify on some of the things you've heard and just discuss some of the things you have not seen. You have seen some impacts, but you have not seen a lot of others, as the Congressman Van Drew alluded to. And a good part of that will be the acoustics. But let me highlight some other impacts as well. We can go to the next slide. These are things that I do not believe you have really seen. And we'll try to go through it. A real impact statement. You've seen impact statements, you've seen documents 2,000 pages long. They have glossy covers. On the cover they say it's an impact statement, but it's really not an impact statement, at least ones that I'm familiar with, and I'll explain why. You haven't really seen the movement of the blades on the turbines. When you've seen these renditions, you see a static device not moving, but actually you're also going to see the movement of the blades, which can be a little, a rendition on our website. You can go look at it. The wind drives the waves, and we'll touch on that as well. Radar interference. We have military radars in Gibbsboro, New Jersey. They look out over the ocean. I believe they look for unwanted aircraft. They can be interfered with by the turbines, and we'll touch on that. You have not seen, as the mayor has alluded to, and Congressman Van Drew, you have not seen a credible cause of the recent whale deaths, and we'll touch on that. And then, again, the operation of these large turbines. I don't think you've heard about that. You've probably seen something on the vessel surveys, and you've probably heard about pile driving noise when they construct the turbines, but you haven't heard about operation, and that could be actually the worst, and we'll touch on that. And as the mayor just mentioned, you really haven't seen benefits of the project. You know, maybe all this damage is worth it. When you look at a project, you try to weigh the benefits against the cost, but I don't think you've really seen specific benefits of the project, and we'll see, we'll try to talk about that a little bit too. Okay, next slide. This is just the LBI project, and you know, although I'm most familiar with that because we've spent most of our time working on the LBI project, but the things we're going to talk about are common to the Ocean Wind project. They're common to what you're going to experience further south. All right, next slide. This is one of the visual renditions. I won't touch on that. You've seen it, and Chris Placatella will elaborate on all this. Next slide. Why haven't you seen an EIS? Why am I saying that? Well, because an EIS, the purpose of an EIS is about choice. It's about alternatives. It's designed when a federal agency makes a big decision, they should consider environmental impact, and they should get your input on that when they make large decisions. In this process, all the big decisions have been made already, and you didn't see an EIS for that. You were not asked for your input on that. The company and the agency have already decided on the turbine location. They picked the lease area. They decided on the number of turbines. The state's going to purchase a certain amount. They decided on the size of the turbine. They're going with the large ones because they make more money off that. I think they've already decided on what color to paint them. So after they decided all this, they come to you, they plop down a 2,000-page document, and they say, hey, we really want your input. On what? On what? Their alternatives in this document are virtually meaningless. They have some concocted alternatives where they move a few turbines this way or that way. That doesn't change the environmental impact of the project. So, you know, they're asking for input after they basically made all the big decisions. And I think you'll find the impact statements they put out are virtually incomprehensible and impossible to read. So what am I saying here? You know, what is this? It actually, and I don't mean to be too harsh, but it's actually an insult to you to present you with this kind of process. You have not been engaged in the real decisions. And, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't comment on these documents, but what I would suggest when you comment on what's not in it, as opposed to maybe more than what's in it. And demand that they take a look at alternative locations and alternative sizes of the turbines and alternative numbers of the turbines and come back to you with a real document, which is the way this process is supposed to work. So that's why I'm saying you haven't really seen a real impact statement, because this process is one of the worst I have ever seen from the federal government. All right, next slide. Audible noise at the shore, it was touched on. You have not seen, I don't believe, an analysis of that. And I have seen that for other projects. I've seen it for projects that are located 40, 50 miles out, because for those projects, by the time the noise gets to the shore, it's not a problem. But here we've got projects 9 miles away, 13 miles away, 15 miles away. We can hear the operation of these turbines, we believe. We've done our own numbers. We find that when you look at the whole project, the noise we're going to hear is going to exceed the New Jersey standards, the nighttime residential standards. And that is not going to be pleasant. It's going to be annoying. And the noise actually could also be of a pulsating kind of nature, which makes it even more upsetting and annoying. So look, we're going to put out a report on this. I'm sure the agencies are going to criticize us. They'll say we did it wrong, we got the wrong numbers, whatever. You know, we think our numbers are right. But the really important thing is, where's the study? Where's their analysis of whether or not we're going to hear these turbines at the shore? And I think you can figure out that is not going to be a pleasant experience at the shoreline. All right, the next slide. This was touched on also, but we are going to see reduced breeze at the shore, and with that, lower waves at the shore, because the wind drives the wave action. And this is because the turbines are extracting the wind energy that we normally get. Is there a study for New Jersey? No. Was there a study done for New York? Yes. We picked off data from that New York study, and we concluded that we're going to see like a 26% reduction in the breeze that we would normally get at the shoreline. And with that, less wave height. So here again, I expect they're going to come back to us and they'll say, you know, Bob, your numbers are wrong, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But that's not the issue. The issue is, where's their study? And if they're convinced that we're not going to experience this, then let's see it. Let's see the data. But so far, I've seen nothing on this. All right, next slide. So now when you look at the shore impact, it's not just the visible renditions that we saw a little while ago and that Chris will elaborate on, but now you're looking at visible turbines, rotating blades, reduced wind, audible noise. This is not some mild change in the shore experience. In our view, this is going to be the destruction of the shore experience. And so all these things that you haven't seen, you should see. You should see, and you should demand to see it. All right, next slide. One final thing on things we have not seen, and this is kind of troublesome, is this red area here was created by the Department of Defense. And 3 years ago, they said that this was an exclusion zone for DOD. And this covers about half of the lease area for these projects. And so we tried to get from DOD, well, what's really the concern here? And it was hard to get. They're not really forthcoming. But we did find that there was some concern with our radars in Gibbsboro. They're around here. And they're military radars, and they look out over the ocean for unwanted aircraft. And originally there was some concern that the wind turbines here would interfere with that radar and compromise our ability to see what's happening offshore. So I did manage to get a brief talk with DOD recently, and now they're okay. They said, oh, we're okay now. So I said, well, why are you okay? And they said, well, we have a better definition of the project now. But I said, since 2020, the project's just gotten bigger, taller, packed more closely together. How the hell is that good for a radar beam? And so again, I've asked them, are they going to do an analysis of this? They did an analysis 3 years ago of the Ocean Wind Project, and it was unclassified. We didn't have to ask for classified information. And so, is anyone going to do a radar interference study? Couldn't get an answer. When I asked that question, it kind of ended the email exchange. I didn't get a response. But, you know, this is something we should know. You know, particularly now with our great relations with Russia and China, I do not think we want to compromise any of our defense capability. So this should be asked for. All right, next. Okay, enough of, now we can talk about the whales. Next. This is a great video. I can't play it. We're not hooked up to the internet. But I would advise you to go to YouTube and just search on right whales in the Bay of Fundy. And you're going to see a great video of these whales. And that's really, you know, what we're fighting for here, to preserve that for our kids and our grandkids. Next. Just a little bit about, you know, what's going on here with the noise. And, you know, this is the sea surface, this is the sea bed. We've got relatively shallow water off the coast until we get to the end of the outer continental shelf. So you got a noise source here, and you know, initially that will spread out in this area like a spear, and it spreads out a lot, but it only spreads out till it hits the bottom. And the bottom's not that deep. The bottom's only maybe 25 meters deep. After it hits the bottom, it starts going this way. It bounces off the bottom, and the sound waves go this way and that way. You might see the term horizontal spreading, because the sound is spreading horizontally. This is the problem, because the whales are out here. Most of the whales are not going to be under the vessel. They're going to be out here. So it's this horizontal spreading that we want to watch, and we'll talk about that a little more. You're going to see reference to the way we analyze this stuff in the law, and the law breaks things up into this level A, direct damage to the whale's hearing. Basically, enough noise to destroy the whale's hearing. And then level B, they call disturbance of the whale's behavior. That occurs at a lower level of noise. The agencies are harping on this. You're going to see statements like, and we're going to get to this more, but the vessel surveys aren't directly killing the whales. They aren't directly destroying their ears. This is not the issue. We're not contending that that's happening. And just as a little aside here, this is what they're sending the whale tissue for those necropsy studies. But first of all, the delay in getting results is very strange, because the Department of Agriculture that is going to end up doing these studies, they have not received any request yet for these necropsies. So if the material is going from Marine Mammal Stranding Center to NOAA, and then it's supposed to go from NOAA to the laboratory, and we're supposed to be waiting on this stuff, the laboratory has received no requests. And we found that out through a Freedom of Information request. So there is something very strange going on here, but even if you get results back from this, this is not expected to be the issue. This is the issue. At lower levels of noise, you disturb the whale's behavior, and the agencies now, they just blow that off. They say, okay, well, the whale's behavior is disturbed, so what? No problem, it'll be okay in half an hour. No, that is not the case, and the disturbance of behavior can lead to all kinds of bad things, which can then kill the whale. So there's a big difference between this word direct and indirect. And it's the indirect you should be looking for, not the direct. And you can see some of the behavior here that can lead to bad things. From the whale's perspective, it don't matter whether this happens or this happens, the end result's the same. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I just have to talk a little bit about this decibel scale. Noise is measured in decibels for us. We count noise in decibels. Makes it easy for us humans to do things. But actually, this scale is very strange. And every time you see a plus 10 decibels for us, that actually means that the noise hitting the whale is 10 times greater. 10 times greater than what this says. So if you see us quibbling with NOAA over decibels, it's because of this. And a 20 decibel change would mean 100 times more noise energy going out into the ocean. And that affects things tremendously, that change. So decibels are really important. They're nothing to fool around with. And when these agencies present these decibel numbers, we need to take a very hard look as to whether they're justified. All right, next slide. Oh, where's the slide? I guess it doesn't show the picture. All right, well, anyway, next slide then. Okay, as has been mentioned, we've seen an unprecedented number of whale strandings in a 3-month period. We've seen 10 in 3 months.
The annual average in the past for the whole year is 6. It's about 6. So we've seen more than that just in 3 months. Obviously, something is going on here that is unusual. You know, so what do you look for? Well, one obvious thing are the vessel surveys that are going on out there. And this period, by the way, began in December. We think this whole process should be examined because this is going on for all the authorizations they are doing. And we see tremendous inconsistency, lack of justification, and remember, those decibel numbers are critical. You can't just throw them around, you got to justify them. We don't see that. The other thing they do not do when they approve these things is they don't consider the cumulative effect of the 6 vessels. They do one vessel at a time. They say, that's not so bad, we approved that one. And the second one comes in, and they do the same thing. And nobody adds up the 6 or the 8. And that again. You also hear everything's to do with vessel strike. Now, from the data for recent whale strandings, only 20% have been attributable to vessel strike, and even though some of those say possible vessel strike. So 80% are still unaccounted for, and they're not explained. And as the Congressman alluded to, some of the things that have been thrown out there, you know, climate change is causing this? No. Climate change is not changing in 3 months. It's taking decades. And that makes absolutely no sense to us. Increased vessel activity, we looked at that. It's only changed by a few percent in the last couple of years. So again, that's not going to account for a spike like we're seeing. And then the other one I really like is change feeding patterns, that the whales, they're coming in closer to shore to feed. Well, I haven't seen any evidence of that, but even if that were the case, you know, what's killing them? I mean, indigestion? I mean, what is it? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So the things that are being thrown out there do not make any sense to us. And the obvious thing are the vessel surveys, and they absolutely refuse to investigate it. They just dismiss it out of hand, and they will not even do a serious investigation. And these kinds of things, this is not an unreasonable thing to ask. These kinds of investigations are done all over the world by other countries when they encounter similar circumstances like this. They look at where the vessels were, they look at what the noise levels from the vessels were, and they try to figure out what's going on. And so to ask for this is not an unreasonable thing to ask for. The other thing you'll hear is that because these same people who are saying now that the vessel strikes, that the vessels are not a problem, 3 years ago they were up in arms when vessel surveys were being done for oil and gas development. And they even filed suit to stop the vessel surveys when it was for oil and gas. And the excuse you hear is, well, those surveys used air guns. The air guns were worse than the units we're using here. However, that is only partially true. The air guns are in some sense worse, but the devices being used here are also quite capable of extending noise levels out miles that can disturb the whale. So let's look a little more about that. I won't take you through all the tables, the numbers, but just these bottom two here. Remember I said how everything is so sensitive to these decibel assumptions? These are the assumptions that they're making for New Jersey. These are not my assumptions. These are assumptions that Marine Fisheries has used elsewhere for approving other things. When you compare the two, for New Jersey, there's not a problem, just 1/10 of a mile from the vessel. Beyond that, no problem. For the other assumptions, it goes out miles. Obviously, the further you go out, the more whales you potentially impact. So why is everything all of a sudden so optimistic for New Jersey approvals? Very good question. And we are trying to get to the heart of that. We are commenting very critically to marine fisheries, basically, what the hell are you people doing? And we are seeing tremendous inconsistencies from one project to another, and it does not appear to me that the bone or marine fisheries are exercising any oversight over what the companies are giving them. The company's giving them these 200-page acoustic reports. They run models. They say our model is great. Here's the answer. That's it. No, you can't just accept results from models. You have to find out what the model is calculating, what the inputs to the model are. So, beyond the immediate problem of the vessel surveys, the whole way this program is being implemented, to us, just cries out for some review. Maybe a court will demand that. Maybe the Congress can demand that. But the way the program's implementing now, frankly, is scary. And it could result in really significant harm to many marine mammals. And so this is a big issue. Next. Okay, now, migration. It was alluded to that we have migration right off our coast of a number of whales, including the North Atlantic right whale, which is down now to 350 animals and in danger. It is really in danger. And this is a right whale calf off of North Carolina, appears to be having a good time. Let's see what might happen to this calf on the next slide. This is a terrible looking slide, but it will show you in the white where we've selected wind energy areas for turbines, up and down the coast, here, 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 up there. The green area is the dominant migration path for that right whale. It looks like the bone people have selected these wind energy areas right in the migration path of this whale. I don't know. Somebody at Bone does not like the right whale. And we're going to see now what the implications of this are. But for the large turbines that we are seeing that they want to install today, the noise from the new large turbines is very high and could essentially block the migration of this whale. Let's take a little harder look at that. This is the area in red off of LBI. This is the lease area for us. And we engaged an acoustics company to look at the noise levels from these large turbines and project them outward and see how far the high noise would go. And what we found was that the elevated noise that's going to block the whale, when whales encounter elevated noise, they try to avoid it. It's going to go out 93 miles. That essentially goes out all the way to this dark area where they do not migrate. This drops off the outer continental shelf, and the whales have not historically migrated out there. They've migrated from here to here, and we are now potentially blocking that entire pathway by operational noise from large turbines. Have you seen any of this discussed? No. No. It is being totally ignored by the agencies, and I believe I know why. Because it casts doubt on the wisdom of their selection of the wind energy areas in the first place. It looks to us like the program has made some gigantic mistakes here in how they have cited these areas. So I'm not surprised that they're trying to whitewash it and sweep it under the rug, but you can only do that so far, and this is one thing we will be taking to court, and we will ask the judge to decide whether this is valid or not. South Jersey and the way that EIS process was pursued. And the other thing, these same farm corporations that are proposing the projects, off Brigantine, LBI, Ocean City, 9 miles out, 13 miles out, they don't do that in Europe. In Europe, these newer projects are proposed 44 miles out. So they're respecting the shore communities in France and Britain and Spain and England, but they come here and that respect is gone. Those lessons are gone. And the other interesting thing is they're hitting us with these 15 megawatt turbines, which, as I mentioned, have much, much larger underwater noise problems, but they're still installing 8 megawatt turbines. So they're protecting their marine life, but they come in here and they're risking our marine life. So there's just such a disparity, and again, I won't go into the EIS process, but to me, again, that's insulting. It's time to get off the fence. It is. They're going to be making decisions on these projects, and there is no doubt they will approve everything. There is nothing that can be brought to their attention that is going to make them say no to a project. So we're going to be facing these decisions for Ocean Wind, I don't know, maybe in 4 or 5 months. For the project off LBI, maybe in 9 or 10 months. So it is time to really put pressure on the federal agency, express your displeasure on the project, on the process, and to every elected representative, regardless of party. The Congressman is absolutely correct. This is not partisan. Our group is not partisan. We have independents, Democrats, Republicans, everybody's working together. And, and all this stuff about, we can't work together. No, that's absolute nonsense. Once you decide on what you want to do,